And now we're going to kick it on over to our on-the-spot correspondents, Laura and Tim, as they review Quest for Fire.
Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Tim.
And today we're reviewing Quest for Fire.
Here's the trailer.
14 years ago, 2001, A Space Odyssey was the astounding epic that aroused a generation, telling them where they might be headed. Now, 20th Century Fox presents a science fantasy adventure that will arouse this generation, telling us where we might have begun.
Alright, so Quest for Fire. Laura, initial thoughts on this movie?
Well, it definitely wasn't what I was expecting from a movie. I mean, you can only get so much out of a movie where all of the dialogue is grunting. But I can't say I particularly enjoyed it between just really uncomfortable, like, unconsensual scenes and just, I mean, cavemen aimlessly chasing or trying to find fire. It was not necessarily something I will seek out again. How about you?
I'd agree, yeah. Especially with the no dialogue. You know, that is so much of what drives characters and makes them memorable for audiences. So when you just have grunting and kind of the only kind of character moments you get are from visual, like, you know, facial reactions and acting, which the actors, I would say, did a good job at. It's just, you know, it wasn't enough to carry it for me. And, yeah, especially, we gotta, like, consider that this wasn't a classroom setting, so, like, we do have the context of, like, it wasn't something that we chose on our own free will to watch, so that definitely kind of knocked it down a few pegs for me. But still, there have been other movies that we've watched in this class that I've enjoyed. So this was kind of like just kind of a very middle of the road, and actually, like, the more and more I watched it, I was like, all right, I'm getting more and more tired of this movie.
Right. It's the kind of thing where when you're following a plot, you can't really have this deep character development that keeps us attached to the story when everything just seems so aimless. Like, the characters are obviously Neanderthals, so they're not particularly smart going after these things. There were a few moments that made me laugh that were kind of like just bizarre, like almost like a buddy comedy moments between these three Neanderthals that were just being a bit goofy, but it didn't really have a specific tone as a film either. I couldn't figure out what the filmmakers wanted us to feel.
Yeah, I felt that too, and kind of I think a part of that too was the editing. The editing for me was a little kind of choppy because this wasn't like a totally just flowing narrative where each scene like had a consequence that led to the next scene. It was kind of like the Quest for Fire is the foundation that they're building upon, but there are a few scenes in there that are just like random, like the saber-tooth tiger chase. That was just kind of a random scene, kind of a character building moment. But those scenes, kind of the editing of them, like the way that they moved the scenes around and kind of had them flow into a narrative, didn't feel super satisfying to me. So I think that contributed to kind of me being bored with this film because it felt slow and dragged at paces. And then at other points it was like really quick, like all of a sudden they're on they're a completely different side of the world, and it was like just kind of a weird collaboration of that for me.
Right, and I think that was a trend we saw. I mean, we've seen a few films in that class that are similar concept. There's no dialogue, and it's just people making early human sounds, and I'm really glad as a society we've stopped making that type of movie. I no longer really want to see that, but I mean, you talked about the acting. These guys were giving it their all, really trying to act like early human ancestors. Did any of those performances stick out to you, whether it was good or bad?
It was interesting to see Ron Perlman, an early Ron Perlman for me, who was kind of the big brute of the group. I guess he's always been a good actor in my eyes, so it was interesting to see him kind of work with a role that had very little dialogue. But it was, both the performances were good. It's just kind of like, what do you go off of? Because there's so little knowledge of like how these early human ancestors actually acted and actually interacted with one another and kind of, worked with their environment. So I think I'd say they did a good job. Like, if I was going to say, yeah, that'd be a Neanderthal, I would go point to this movie. But again, it's just really tough to kind of go off of so little historical knowledge that we have. I guess it's kind of like, are they doing a good job? Are we sure? What about you?
I'd have to say the only person I can truly remember from that was the fire bearer, who just, everybody was squawking and making sounds, but this man was howling to the point where I was cracking up. I don't think he was supposed to be comedic, but I was cracking up every time he came on screen.
No, yeah, he was thrilled to see that fire, and then he was the one who put it out at the end too. So that's pretty funny. But all right, so kind of wrapping up our thoughts, what overall would you give this movie for a rating?
Oh gosh, I would have to give it maybe a 2 out of 10 max.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was, I think the only moments that I found particularly entertaining, I don't think were meant to be entertaining in the way that I found them funny. And then there was just a lot of the movie that was just uncomfortable and just also boring at points. Mm-hmm. So, definitely low on my list. How about you?
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking of 3 just because like I said, I like Ron Perlman. Kind of fun to see him in an early role. But yeah, overall, a slow movie that kind of dragged and didn't really do much for me in terms of historical entertainment or any just regular film entertainment. So, very average film, and I just didn't enjoy it, so lower on the scale, 3 for me.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, now let's toss it back to you guys in the studio.
That's all for this week. If you want to follow more Review Crew content, go to the Review Crew Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, as well as Orange TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and YouTube.
Find the Review Q's podcast on Spotify or on our website at orangetvnetwork.syr.edu, where you can also find our blog and more OTN information.
Check out this week's screening hosted by University Union in Kanto. Also, be sure to check out Friday Night Movie Night on OTN. This week's movies are Father's Little Dividend, Attack of the Giant Leeches, and Little Shop of Horrors.
See you next week.